Today, we're going to learn at why did American colonists want to free themselves from Great Britain? All right, George Washington. And also describe the British policies that some American colonists had to endure and believed violated basic principles of constitutional government and their rights as Englishmen. All right. One of the best singers of all time, Freddie Mercury. All right, he sings "I Want to Break Free" and gain some freedoms. All right, so today we're going to learn how English colonists wanted to gain their freedoms. All right, you're welcome to play this on your own time. I am not going to make you listen to it, but it is a great one. So, how did Britain's policy toward the colonies change? All right, think about it in large debts. All right, Britain had incurred large debts to gain its victory over the French in the 7 Years' War, all right, in 1756 to 1763. All right, so they owed a lot of money. Also, the British government, they were under heavy pressure to reduce taxes at home. All right, their tax rates were at very high rates. All right, and we're talking about at home, in Great Britain, across the pond, as I call it, across the Atlantic Ocean. But they were determined to reduce taxes there. So what did this mean for American colonists in the 13 colonies? So we look at what life was like in colonies. But what did this mean? This meant that British ministers and their kings and queens, that the American colonists should pay a fair share of the war debt. All right, so the war debt from the 7 Years' War, we should put that burden on American colonists now. All right, especially because much of that debt had been incurred to protect the colonies. All right, so was that a good reasoning to increase taxes? I'm going to let you think about that for yourself. But they showed continued control of colonists in our 13 colonies. They did a couple of these three things. First, the Proclamation Act of 1763. Maybe you heard of a couple of these, but these are, some very interesting ones. The first one, Proclamation Act. It forbade colonial authorities to allow settlement on Indian lands west of the Appalachians. So it said, you guys can't build west of the Appalachians. All right, you just can't. Number two, the Stamp Act, which introduced a new tax in the colonies by imposing duties on stamps and fees on stamps needed for official documents. And number three, the Quartering Act of 1765. Colonists were required to shelter troops in their own homes. All right, there is a specific amendment that makes sure this will never happen again. What amendment is that? Do some research because we're going to talk about it in a couple weeks. All right. One of my favorite movies is called The Patriot. I will let you guys watch that video to yourself. But basically, it is the British, the Redcoats at the farm of Mel Gibson's house. And what life was like when, soldiers just busted into their house and home and kind of took over. All right. It was scary times. Finally, all right, the colonists, they were getting pretty upset. All right. Samuel Adams and John Hancock. They were getting very upset. All right, they started to resist the Stamp Act. They started not to pay it. I'm sure you guys have learned all about the Boston Tea Party. We'll talk about that as well. But they put up a collective fight against taxes. All right, and they convinced many Americans that the British government was prepared to use military force to coerce the colonists into obedience. All right, they didn't want to be controlled by the British. All of these acts were happening, and there's more. There's more that I didn't even put on here. All right, so today we're going to look at a document of real life scenarios in the colonies and what freedoms were being restricted in these real life scenarios. All right, so once again, if you want, check out this video of The Patriot, Mel Gibson movie about what life was like as a colonist. And also, if you want some motivation, listen to Freddie Mercury and his great song, "I Want to Break Free."